Peter, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
What brings you to ICOE 2016?
Ireland is a significant player in the whole world of ocean energy, particularly on the wave side because of the resource we have off the west coast of Ireland, which is probably the most energy bountiful wave in the world. It's an industry we have a great interest in. We want to build a global position in it, not so much as a source of new electricity, because our electricity needs are met both in the renewables and other areas quite adequately by our current infrastructure, but as an export opportunity, particularly to the UK, and also as a global supply chain opportunity. And as a consequence of that, we have invested heavily in research facilities. Last year we opened new ocean energy test tanks. We have the largest single ocean energy research program in the world called MRIA underway at the present time. We have a quarter-scale test site on the west coast of Ireland, and we're going to build, starting this year, the Atlantic Marine Energy Test Site off the coast of Mayo on the west coast of Ireland. And any device that survives off Mayo for a winter will survive anything.
Why is Ireland putting all these resources into this site?
Well, because if you take a long-term perspective, ocean energy will have a place to play in the world. You have to take a long-term perspective. And our very successful industrial development effort of the last 40 or 50 years has been built on taking long-term perspectives in areas such as software, for example, electronics, and so on. I can recall, as I used to work in our development agency, I can recall when Apple first came to Ireland and Steve Jobs was a very young boy when that happened. I can recall when Microsoft came to Ireland and we almost didn't support it because their balance sheet at the time was so weak. So we've always taken selected sectors, we put a lot of effort and time behind them. We don't always score up front. I liken our experience in ocean energy and that of Scotland whimsically to that of the tortoise and the hare, Ireland being the tortoise, but this tortoise has got hare-like qualities to it. So it is, we're catching up very much in Scotland, but we're working closely with Scotland because there's plenty of room for both countries. We both have many of the best companies in this emerging sector and technology. We both have excellent test facilities, complementary in some ways, and the two countries are good friends anyhow.
So what are the policy and financial environments in Ireland that will help support the industry?
Well, in a macro sense, we have a very positive business environment, as many countries envy us with our attraction, for example, in recent years of all the social media companies with tens of thousands of jobs in areas like that. So we have low taxes, we have a sovereign government, which means that people in business have easy access to power, and so on and so forth. On a more specific level, we have been putting all of the necessary policy instruments in place. So we have an ocean renewable energy development plan. We are giving priority in R&D policies to ocean energy. We have a tariff support plan for early devices going into the water. And shortly, I hope, we will be seeing a comprehensive package of consenting legislation. So all the pieces are being put in place. This is an emerging industry, or an emerging technology. It's going to be probably 10 years before you see significant arrays of tidal deployed, probably 15 to 20 years before wave deploys in significant numbers. But it's worth bearing in mind the parallel there is with the wind industry, the offshore wind industry's experience. It's only in 2001, 15 years ago, that a small array of offshore wind turbines was put into the water in Middle London in Denmark, just 40 megawatts, very small indeed. Today, sorry, not today, but in the first half of 2015, 2 gigawatts was deployed offshore Europe. There are almost 3,000 offshore wind turbines in Europe in 80 offshore wind farms. It's a very significant and rapidly expanding part of the electricity generation infrastructure in Europe. So based on the experience of wind, which took quite a long time to develop, faced lots of technical problems, etc., we can be hopeful about wave and tidal, but there are challenges before we get to the promised land.
And the promised land being?
Well, the promised land as set out by people like the Carbon Trust, Scottish Enterprise, Ernst & Young, to name but three that I can think of offhand, is that by the 2040s, wave and tidal should be both a significant source of electricity, particularly in these islands because we have so much of the wave resource, not perhaps so much at the tidal resource, but also they will be significant sources of jobs and income, very significant sources of jobs and income. And that's why governments in Ireland and Scotland and so on are putting the effort they are putting behind this, is to generate jobs and income. It's not to generate electricity at the end of the day. We can both meet our renewable energy needs from onshore wind with ease.
From the conference, what are the key messages that you're taking away?
Well, I think the conference, it's interesting, the conference is seeing two things going on in parallel. There is the conference on the one hand, and there is the critical Ocean Energy Forum being run by Ocean Energy Europe, the European Trade Association, going on in parallel in this building, and there's lots of interplay between the two. And between one thing and another, by the end of this coming year, by October, November this year, the Ocean Energy Forum, with, if you like, support music from this conference and everyone involved in it, will have developed a roadmap for Europe in ocean energy, which is very likely to be adopted by the European Commission and is likely to be the Union's roadmap. And that's the first time ocean energy will have gotten on the agenda of Europe, which is very important. Now, I know Britain may well be gone at that stage, but hopefully you won't. We'd like you to stay at every level. But we believe that this conference is playing a part, and the parallel sessions in the Ocean Energy Forum playing a key part in developing a roadmap and a policy for the framework for this area in future.
So what does the future hold?
The future holds challenges, and why does it? It's an easy word to use. We're not there yet in terms of the technology in tidal, but it's getting there. There is a growing consensus as to what the solutions are. We certainly aren't there in terms of technical consensus in regard to wave energy. And wave energy is sometime into the future, probably the early 2020s, before we see significant deployments, if even at that stage, probably mid-2020s. And when you think about it, this is the last frontier for science, for engineering. There is nothing more challenging than making electricity generated by waves at sea work all day, every day, generating electrons to power our homes and factories and offices and so on. But we will get there. We got there in onshore wind. Bear in mind, onshore wind has been around since the 1870s, 1880s in Scotland and in Ohio. But it only started really getting deployed and developed in any real sense from the late 80s, and now it's everywhere. I mentioned earlier the example of offshore wind, again, being deployed at scale in Europe 15 years ago. It was a Mickey Mouse enterprise. In wave and tidal, particularly wave, we're some way off that, but we will get there, and when we do get there, it will be a real world beater, particularly for the countries. Ireland and Scotland are very fortunate in this regard that have a wave resource. Very few do.
Peter, that's fascinating.
Okay, thank you
Thank you very much for your time.
Not at all, thank you.